Okay, so today we're diving into a world that most people don't think much about, but that's absolutely crucial to, well, pretty much everything shipping.
Yeah, and not just any shipping. We're talking about dangerous goods, the kind of stuff that requires extra care and attention to detail.
Exactly. Think massive container ships, but instead of carrying those cute plushies you order online, they've got things that could, let's just say, make a big splash if things go wrong.
That's where our deep dive topic comes in. IMDGGenie.ai.
We've got a whole stack of info on this AI platform, and from what I've seen so far, it's aiming to make the whole process of shipping dangerous goods safer, smoother, and a lot less stressful.
Less stressful, for sure. It's about taking this incredibly complex world of regulations, the IMDG code, and making it more manageable, more accessible.
Right, and they're doing that with a trio of tools: Advisor, Screener, and Segregator.
Each tackling a different aspect of the dangerous goods shipping process.
So let's start with the Advisor. This one's all about providing on-demand expertise, kind of like having a maritime expert right there in your pocket.
Yeah. Imagine having a seasoned captain who knows the IMDG code inside and out, whispering in your ear, guiding you every step of the way. That's the Advisor.
That sounds pretty handy, especially when you consider how dense and complex the IMDG code can be.
Oh, absolutely. But IMDGenie.ai tries to bridge that gap between the regulations and the people who need to follow them.
And one way they're doing that with the Advisor is through this really cool feature, a search bar that understands plain English.
Yeah, like instead of having to know all the technical jargon and code numbers, you can just ask it a question, just like you'd ask a person.
So you could ask something like, can I ship batteries with fireworks?
Now, common sense should probably tell you the answer to that one.
Hopefully. But the Advisor isn't just about simple yes or no answers. It actually digs deeper, explaining why certain things are allowed or not allowed, often using visuals to make it even clearer.
It's not just about compliance, it's about understanding, which is super important when you're dealing with potentially hazardous stuff.
Right, you want to be sure you're doing things right. Not just because the rules say so, but because you understand the risks involved.
Exactly. And that understanding is what the Advisor aims to provide. It's all about making that expert knowledge accessible and digestible.
Which brings us to our next tool, the Screener. Now, this one feels like having an AI detective scanning your cargo list for anything suspicious.
It's all about early detection and prevention. You know how there's that saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure? Well, the Screener embodies that perfectly when it comes to dangerous goods.
So it's like having a second set of eyes. But these eyes are specifically trained to catch those little details that might slip past a human inspector.
Right, it's looking for anything that could indicate a potential problem, mislabeling, incorrect documentation, incompatible goods packed together, you name it.
And I imagine speed is a big factor here, right? I mean, these container ships are handling massive amounts of cargo.
Absolutely. The Screener can analyze huge data sets in a fraction of the time it would take a human. Plus, it doesn't get tired or make those little mistakes that we all do from time to time.
And this is where the AI really comes into play, right? The ability to process information and make those assessments quickly and accurately.
Exactly. The Screener uses AI to analyze all sorts of data shipping manifests, packing lists, even those handwritten notes that sometimes slip into the mix.
So it's not just about perfectly formatted data. It can handle the messiness of the real world.
Exactly. It's designed to be as versatile and robust as possible.
And then there's this thing called a confidence score that the Screener assigns to each of its assessments. I'm curious about how that works.
Well, think of it like this. The AI is constantly learning and refining its ability to identify dangerous goods. The confidence score is a way for it to communicate how certain it is about a particular assessment.
So a high confidence score means you can be pretty sure the AI is on the right track, whereas a lower score might indicate that a human should take a closer look.
Right. It's not about blindly trusting the AI. It's about using its assessments as a guide to prioritize and streamline the human review process.
It's like a partnership between AI and human expertise.
Exactly. And that brings us to our final tool, the segregator. Now, this one sounds like it takes some serious spatial reasoning skills.
It's like playing a high-stakes game of Tetris, but with potentially dangerous consequences if you get it wrong.
Right. The segregator is all about making sure that incompatible goods aren't packed together in a way that could create a hazardous situation.
Like putting flammable liquids next to explosives. Definitely not a good mix.
Not a good mix at all. And that's where the segregator steps in. It uses the IMDG code rules to determine which goods can be safely stored together and which need to be kept far, far apart.
And it does this by actually simulating the container loading process, right? I read something about that.
That's right. You can input your cargo information, and the segregator will virtually arrange it within the container, flagging any potential violations of the IMDG code.
So it's like having a virtual safety inspector on hand, making sure you're not creating a ticking time bomb inside that container.
You got it. And the cool thing is, it's not just about saying, no, you can't do that.
Oh. So it actually offers solutions.
Exactly. If the segregator detects a violation, it'll suggest alternative loading arrangements to bring you into compliance.
So it might recommend moving certain items further apart, using different types of packaging, or even suggesting a completely different container configuration.
It's all about finding the safest and most efficient way to pack those containers.
Okay, we've gotten a good high-level overview of these three tools: Advisor, Screener, and Segregator. Now, I want to dig a little deeper. What's it actually like to use these tools? What's the user interface like? What does the user see and experience when they interact with IMDGGenie.ai?
Well, starting with the advisor, one of the first things you'll notice is how user-friendly the interface is.
That's great to hear, because we're talking about some pretty complex stuff here.
Absolutely. But the designers of IMDGGenie.ai have done a great job of making it accessible, even for those who aren't tech wizards.
So paint me a picture. What does the user actually see when they open up the advisor?
Well, you've got this clean, intuitive dashboard, and front and center is that prominent search bar we talked about earlier, almost inviting you to ask your IMDG code questions.
But go ahead, ask me anything.
Exactly. And because it's designed to understand natural language, you don't need to know any specific codes or jargon. You can just type in your question in plain English.
So let's say I'm a shipper, and I'm not sure if I can ship lithium batteries with flammable liquids. I just type that into the search bar.
Yep, just like that. And here's where it gets really interesting. Instead of just giving you a yes or no answer, the advisor actually pulls up the relevant excerpts from the IMDG code.
So you can see the actual rule for yourself, which is great for transparency and building trust.
Right. You're not just taking the AI's word for it, you're seeing the source material.
That's important, especially when you're dealing with regulations that can have serious consequences if you get them wrong. But I have to say, the IMDG code can be pretty dense and technical. How does the advisor make that information more digestible for the average user?
That's where the visual aids come in. Depending on your query, the advisor might show you diagrams, flowcharts, even interactive maps.
So instead of trying to decipher pages of text, you might see a simple diagram showing the required separation distances between different classes of dangerous goods, or a flowchart outlining the steps you need to take for proper labeling and documentation.
Exactly. It's all about presenting the information in a way that makes sense, visually and intuitively.
That's a game changer for sure. But I'm curious about something. The IMDG code is constantly being updated and amended. How does the advisor keep up with all the latest changes?
That's one of its key strengths. The advisor is connected to a constantly updated database of IMDG code information, so you can be confident that you're always getting the most accurate and up-to-date guidance.
It's like having a live connection to the IMDG code, constantly feeding the advisor with the latest and greatest.
Exactly. And that's crucial in an industry where regulations are constantly evolving.
So it's not just a static repository of information. It's a dynamic tool that's always learning and adapting.
Precisely. And that's what makes it so valuable.
It really does empower users to confidently navigate the complexities of dangerous goods shipping. It's like having an IMDG code encyclopedia and a seasoned expert rolled into one, all accessible through this simple search bar.
That's a great way to put it. It really demystifies the whole process.
Okay, I think we've covered the advisor pretty thoroughly. Ready to move on to the screener and see what this AI detective is all about.
Absolutely. Let's dive into the world of AI-powered cargo analysis. Okay, so we're moving on to the screener. This is where IMDGGenie.ai really starts to flex its AI muscles.
We talked about it earlier as being like an AI detective, right? Scanning through all that cargo data, looking for anything that could spell trouble.
Right. And what's really impressive is how versatile it is.
We touched on that earlier. It can handle all sorts of different data formats, right?
Yeah, spreadsheets, PDFs, even scanned images of handwritten notes.
I'm curious, though. What's the actual user experience like? If I'm a shipping company using the screener, what do I actually see and do?
Well, it's designed to be pretty straightforward. You typically start by uploading your cargo data, whatever format it's in.
Okay, so no need to be a data scientist to use this thing.
Nope, not at all. The screener guides you through the whole process. And once the data is uploaded, the AI gets to work analyzing everything and looking for those red flags.
And then what? How are the results presented?
Usually in a nice, clear visual format like a table or a dashboard, you'll see a list of your cargo items and each one will have a color-coded flag next to it.
Ah, right, the green, yellow, red system we talked about earlier.
Exactly. Green means everything looks good, yellow means there might be a potential issue that needs a closer look, and red means there's a high-risk problem that requires immediate attention.
So it's like a traffic light system for your cargo, giving you a quick visual overview of the situation.
A great analogy. And to make things even easier, you can usually click on a flagged item to get more information.
So you can see why it was flagged, what the specific concern is.
Right, exactly. And this is where that confidence score we talked about earlier comes into play.
Yes. That was the AI's way of saying how sure it is about its assessment.
Right. So if you see a red flag with a 95% confidence score, you know you need to take action right away.
Makes sense. But what if the score is lower? Say 60%.
Then it's still worth investigating, but it might not be as urgent. It's all about using the AI as a guide to prioritize your workflow.
So the human expertise is still essential.
Oh, absolutely. The screener isn't meant to replace human judgment. It's meant to augment it, to make the whole process more efficient and accurate.
And I imagine that feature importance thing we mentioned earlier plays a role in that, right? Helping humans understand why the AI flagged something.
Right. Feature importance highlights the specific factors that led to a particular flag. So, for example, if the screener flags a shipment of cleaning agents, it might highlight the fact that the chemical composition is the risky part, not the packaging.
So it's not just saying this is dangerous. It's saying this is dangerous because of this specific characteristic.
Exactly. And that helps users understand the reasoning behind the AI's assessment and focus their attention on the most critical aspects. It's a huge time saver and really helps to prioritize actions.
It's like the AI is explaining its thought process, showing its work, so to speak.
A great way to put it, it builds trust and transparency, which is so important when you're dealing with AI-powered systems.
Okay, I think we got a pretty solid understanding of the screener now. It's amazing how AI is being used to tackle these complex challenges in the shipping world, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it's only getting more sophisticated over time. Ready to move on to the segregator and see how it virtually packs those containers?
You bet. That's the one I've been most curious about.
Well, get ready for some exciting visuals because this is where things get really interactive.
I'm all ears. So tell me, what's the user experience like with the segregator?
Picture this. You're looking at a virtual representation of a shipping container on your screen.
Okay, I can see it.
And you've got all these digital representations of your cargo items ready to be placed inside.
It's like a video game, but instead of spaceships and aliens, we're dealing with barrels of chemicals and boxes of explosives.
Haha, exactly. But don't let the game-like interface fool you. The stakes are very real here.
So how does it actually work?
Well, you can literally drag and drop those cargo items into the container, and as you do that, the segregator is constantly checking in the background, making sure you're not putting incompatible goods together.
So it's like having the IMDG code built right into the system, constantly monitoring your actions.
Right. And if you try to put something in the wrong place, it'll let you know, often using those same color-coded warnings we saw with the screener: green for good, yellow for caution, and red for don't even think about it.
I love those visual cues.
Yeah.
They make it so easy to understand what's going on. But what happens if you do get a red flag? Does the segregator just stop you dead in your tracks?
Not at all. It's not just about pointing out problems, it's about finding solutions. So if it detects a violation, it'll actually offer suggestions for how to fix it.
So it might say, hey, you can't put those flammable liquids next to those explosives, but if you move them over here, you'll be good to go.
Exactly. It's like having a virtual logistics expert guiding you through the process, making sure you create a safe and compliant loading plan. And it's not just about segregation. It also takes into account things like weight distribution, ensuring the container is balanced and stable.
So it'll warn you if the container's too top-heavy and likely to tip over.
Exactly. It's considering all those factors to create the safest and most efficient loading plan possible.
This is seriously impressive. It's like taking all that complex IMDG code knowledge and translating it into this visual interactive experience.
And that's the beauty of it. It makes this often intimidating world of regulations much more accessible and intuitive.
It sounds like IMDGGenie.ai has really thought of everything, hasn't it? They've created this suite of tools that seems to cover all the bases when it comes to shipping dangerous goods.
They've really tried to create a comprehensive solution that addresses the needs of everyone involved in the process, from shippers to carriers to regulators.
Okay, we spent a lot of time talking about the technical side of things, the features, the algorithms, but I want to shift gears now and talk about the real-world impact of IMDGGenie.ai. How is this platform actually changing the game for companies that deal with dangerous goods? What are they seeing in terms of tangible benefits?
That's where things get really exciting. We're moving beyond the theoretical and into the practical, looking at how IMDGGenie.ai is impacting businesses on a day-to-day basis.
Let's dive into that then. What are the key benefits that companies are seeing from using IMDGGenie.ai? What's the real value proposition here?
Well, I think one of the most significant benefits is the enhanced safety it brings to the entire shipping process.
Absolutely.
And that's really what it's all about at the end of the day, isn't it? Making sure these potentially dangerous materials are transported safely and responsibly.
Couldn't agree more. So how is IMDGGenie.ai actually making a difference in that regard? How are they improving safety?
Well, one of the biggest ways is by simply reducing the risk of human error. Think about it. A lot of the mistakes that happen in dangerous goods shipping come down to people making simple slip-ups.
Yeah, like forgetting to check a regulation, misinterpreting a code, or even just transposing a number on a shipping document.
Exactly. And those little errors can have big consequences.
And IMDGGenie.ai steps in to prevent those errors.
That's the idea. By automating many of the complex tasks and calculations involved in dangerous goods shipping, IMDGGenie.ai acts as a sort of safety net, catching those potential errors before they turn into real-world problems.
It's like having a second set of eyes, constantly double-checking everything to make sure nothing slips through the cracks.
A great way to put it. And that increased safety translates into some pretty tangible benefits for companies.
Oh, like what?
Well, for one, it can help lower insurance premiums.
That makes sense. Insurance companies are always looking for ways to mitigate risk.
Right. And a company that's using IMDGGenie.ai to improve its safety practices is going to be seen as a lower risk, which means lower premiums.
So it's a win-win. Safer shipping and lower costs. Are there any other financial benefits that companies are seeing?
Absolutely. Efficiency is another big one. By automating tasks like checking regulations and planning container loading, IMDGGenie.ai frees up employees to focus on other things.
So instead of spending hours poring over the IMDG code, they can focus on tasks that require more human judgment and creativity?
Exactly. And that can lead to significant cost savings for companies.
It's not just about doing things right. It's about doing things efficiently.
Right. Time is money, as they say.
And faster turnaround times can lead to happier customers, which can ultimately lead to more business.
Absolutely. It's all connected.
Okay, so we've talked about safety, efficiency, and cost savings. But what about the human side of things? How is IMDGGenie.ai changing the way people actually work in this industry?
That's a great question, and I think it's one of the most exciting aspects of this technology. I see it as a way to empower employees, to give them the tools they need to do their jobs better and more safely.
So it's not about replacing humans with robots. It's about giving humans better tools to work with.
Exactly. And that can lead to a more engaged and productive workforce. People feel more confident and competent when they have the right tools at their disposal.
It's like instead of being bogged down by tedious tasks, they can focus on the things that require real human intelligence and ingenuity.
Right. And that can lead to a more fulfilling work experience as well.
IMDGGenie.ai seems like it's addressing a lot of the challenges in the dangerous goods shipping world. But are there any limitations or challenges that companies should be aware of? Are there any potential downsides?
Well, as with any new technology, there's a learning curve involved.
Right. You can't just expect people to start using it perfectly right out of the box.
Exactly. Companies need to invest the time and resources to properly train their staff on how to use the platform. And it's not just about learning how to click the buttons. It's about understanding how the AI works, how to interpret the results, and when to exercise human judgment.
It's about that partnership between humans and AI, making sure they're working together effectively.
That's the key. And another thing to keep in mind is that IMDGGenie.ai is a tool, not a magic solution.
So it's not going to solve every problem overnight.
Right. It's not going to magically transform a company's operations without any effort on their part.
It's not a set and forget it kind of thing.
Exactly. It takes effort, commitment, and a willingness to adapt and learn. But if a company is willing to put in the work, the rewards can be significant.
Well said. I think we've covered a lot of ground here today, from understanding the nuts and bolts of how IMDGGenie.ai works to exploring its real-world impact on companies and the industry as a whole.
It's been a fascinating journey, hasn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as AI continues to evolve, I'm sure we'll see even more innovative applications like this emerge in all sorts of industries.
It's an exciting time to be following the world of AI, that's for sure.
I agree. Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of IMDGenie.ai. We hope you found it informative and engaging.
It's been my pleasure. Always happy to talk about the fascinating ways AI is shaping our world.
And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into the world of AI. Until then, stay curious.